When we think about some of the greatest midseason turnarounds in NBA history, you think about the Celtics last year. You think about teams just figuring it out partway through the year. But this year's Lakers team completely reshaped and upgraded their roster in the middle of the season and then became one of the best teams in the entire league. Really quickly though, I want to thank Sorare and the MBPA for sponsoring today's video. Sorare is a sports fantasy game and marketplace featuring officially licensed digital player cards from the NBA. And I know a lot of you guys have enjoyed playing on Sorare throughout the regular season, but now it includes the postseason as well. In addition to regular gameplay, right now on Sorare, there is a postseason long tournament in which you accumulate points throughout the entirety of the playoffs. And for me personally, something that's worked really well in terms of my lineups throughout the postseason is this like stars and scrubs mentality that I've talked about before, where I have Anthony Davis, I have Devin Booker, then I have some other guys that fit under the point cap that are at least going to play a little bit. They're going to get some run, but my lineup is really going to be anchored by these top two guys that have been playing fantastically as well. But you never really know what's going to happen from week to week, so make sure that you're setting your lineup every single week on Sorare throughout the entirety of this postseason tournament. And if you want to make sure you're building up your score in that playoff tournament leaderboard, make sure to click the link in the description to join the postseason-long playoff tournament on Sorare NBA today. Terms apply and game rules can be found at Sorare.com. Hope you guys have fun, and thank you again to Sorare and the MBPA for sponsoring this video. Now, the Lakers were a team that I said multiple times during the year they weren't true contenders. In the previous version of their roster that had Russell Westbrook on it, that wasn't as deep, that team was not a contender. That team was like a 500 basketball team. And this video basically serves as a shout out to Rob Pelinka, to the front office, for completely changing and reshaping this roster in a way that turned them from a 500 team to legitimate contenders with just a few trades. The first of which was when they brought in Rui Hachimura for basically a couple of second-round picks. They basically brought in Rui for free, and at the time I was like, okay, this is an interesting like flyer on a guy that obviously was talented enough to get selected top 10, and he's been unbelievable for them. I mean, suddenly he's a great off-ball shooter. He's always had great size. He's really struggled to defend in the past, but when Anthony Davis was on the floor, like that's not as big of a deal. And him being able to create in the mid-post and shoot as well off the ball as he has been incredible for them and provides them just another piece of flexibility that old roster just did not have. There was a complete lack of different ways that they could change and use the roster around their two stars, and bringing in someone like Rui is a perfect example of that. Then of course you get into the big one, right? Russell Westbrook and the 2027 first round pick to Utah in exchange for essentially D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. And at the time of this deal, I remember saying, I don't really care about D'Lo that much, but Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley, them, like, I don't want to say getting those guys for free because you don't know what the 2027 first is going to end up being, but the fact that they only traded away one of those first round picks and got back players as valuable as what I thought Vanderbilt and Beasley would be for them, plus some of the offensive creation that D'Lo provides, felt like a fantastic move. I gave them an A grade at the trade deadline for this deal, and it's turned out even better than I thought that it would have, but not really for the reasons that I thought that it would have, because in the postseason, Malik Beasley has not been all that consequential at all. They played him a lot when they first traded for him, but he just hasn't been able to shoot the ball as well as they need. He's not as good of a defender as they need, so he doesn't really play that much. But Vanderbilt has been a really interesting perimeter defending piece for them, someone that has always provided great energy on the offensive glass and just runs around and does stuff, but his flexibility, his versatility in terms of who's able to guard and really being like the head of the spear defensively, especially to start games, then with Anthony Davis behind him as well, has been an unbelievable upgrade for them. And again, speaks to the theme here, which is added versatility. Guys that can do multiple things. Guys like Rui, guys like Jared Vanderbilt that can do multiple things have been incredibly helpful. And then you've got D'Angelo Russell. Everybody knows that, watched the videos in the past at least, I'm not a big D'Lo guy, but he's been like pretty solid for them. He has his moments, he has his weird games where you barely even notice that he's on the floor, but between him and Schroeder and Austin Reeves, one of those guys is going to be playing well in a given game, and having someone of that caliber that can do something for you offensively around LeBron, and at times it's going to be two or maybe even all three of those guys, completely opens up their offense. It allows LeBron to be more passive during certain stretches because he is old. He does need to conserve his energy. He doesn't need to be mismatch hunting LeBron for the entirety of the game, because between D'Lo, Reeves, and Schroeder, one of those guys is going to be playing well at any given time, and adding someone else like D'Lo, even though he's not my favorite player in the world, has really, really helped them, especially at the beginning of these games, to not put so much on LeBron in terms of perimeter creation. That's been the interesting thing about the way that they've changed the way that they've played since LeBron came back from his foot injury. Like, he's still done some stuff in transition, but he's not doing nearly as much in isolation as you normally see or in ball screens as you normally see. There's a lot of LeBron like spotting up on the wing. It's a very different way to play that's only possible because of the leap that Reeves has made late in the year, because of how consistent Schroeder has been at times, and then as well as bringing in D'Angelo Russell. But the biggest point to all of this, I think, that people are going to forget because of how well Russ played for the Clippers in the postseason, is that getting Russell Westbrook away from this situation is just unbelievably helpful, especially when you only have to get rid of one of the first round picks and you get back valuable role players like the guys that I just spent a couple of minutes talking about. Because like, remember when LeBron like broke the scoring record and Russ was just kind of like pouting, and there was reports of, you know, him being upset in the locker room with certain guys, and just the vibes were weird. Not to mention on the court, the fact that his lack of floor spacing really limited what they were able to do offensively, and it made their lineup super strange. He had to come off the bench, all this different stuff. Obviously was great for the Clippers in the postseason, but getting Russ away from this situation and bringing in guys that understood the hierarchy at the end of games, and the fact that it's LeBron, it's AD, and all these other guys, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the bubble Lakers. Like, that's kind of what it looks like. Like, LeBron's less dominant than he was in the bubble, and he's not as overpowering offensively. Of course, he's older, but the concept of, we're going to let Anthony Davis be our best player, we're going to be bigger than you, we're going to be stronger than you, we're going to be more physical, we're going to get to the rim, we're going to rebound, we're going to guard, and we're going to have all these random guys around LeBron and AD that are going to be able to space the floor decently well and create enough offensively to not have LeBron have to do everything. All those components are what led them to the bubble title in 2020, and it's clear that when they made this move, Pelinka wanted to go back a little bit more to that version of that team, the team that they arguably were before they made the Russell Westbrook trade in the first place, where they traded away depth, guys like KCP, guys like Kuzma, away for Russ. Then they did the Russ thing, and now they're basically back to that team that they were before. And I always bring this up. They were great in the bubble, but then they were also good in the following season or two after the bubble. And then guys got hurt. They had a bad end to the year. They traded for Russ, and things completely changed. This version of the Lakers, where it's AD at the forefront, LeBron's also kind of there, and you've got these role guys, and everybody just guards. They get out in transition when they need to, and Anthony Davis is ideally healthy here. This is a version of a Lakers team that we've seen be incredibly successful, and I think was the vision behind the trades in the first place. But all it comes down to moving forward for this Lakers team is the health of their two main guys. And as long as those two guys are healthy and all NBA caliber players still, they're going to be a force for the entirety of the LeBron AD era. And the important thing to this as well is they only traded one of these first round picks. We came into the season thinking they got to trade both, certainly at least one, which ultimately they did. But the fact that they kept that other pick, yes, they owe all these future picks to these other teams, but they still have the flexibility to make another upgrade, make a similar trade to what they just did during the regular season, adding even more depth, even more role players, and sets themselves up as an incredibly interesting team, certainly a much more interesting team than they were prior to making these moves. But really the bottom line to me for all of this is the true like passing of the torch moment to Anthony Davis, who was unbelievable, by the way, in the bubble, but it still felt largely like LeBron's team. This feels like Anthony Davis's opportunity to really be the main guy, which we've been waiting on forever in LA. And as long as he stays healthy, I think he's shown that even though there are some consistency issues game to game offensively, defensively, like, he's probably the best defender in the entire league, certainly the most impactful big man defender in the entire league. And that's such an unbelievable asset for a team that already has kind of put the pieces around him to make that work. Because in other situations, guys like D'Angelo Russell, Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, like, these guys wouldn't be all that playable in the postseason. The only reason that they make sense, that they really exist in this ecosystem, is because of Davis being there, being behind them, making up for their mistakes. And those guys, some of them at least, put in a lot of effort and they try, but they're just never going to be as good of defenders as you're really going to want in a postseason series. But having Davis unlocks your ability to have some above average offensive players out there that aren't great defenders. Davis is the only reason that that's possible. And the other reason that that's possible at all is because of the incredible moves that they made at the trade deadline. I honestly think that it's under talked about, it's underrated how impactful these moves have been, because I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, now, you know, LeBron and AD are healthy. They had some issues with health during the year. No, it's not just that. These moves completely transformed and changed their roster in a way that we haven't really seen in recent years.